Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Borderline Genius, where myself, Anthony Pagnato, and my good friend Kenton Grimes talk about all things trade compliance, and ocean freight, air freight related. We've got a good episode for you. It's the nearly the end of June. We're recording today on June 26th, 2025, and we are rapidly heading into July and the 4th of July weekend, and rounding the curve towards the end of the initial 90-day reprieve on reciprocal tariffs as announced by President Donald Trump in his Rose Garden ceremony several months ago, 90 days ago, I guess. For those of you that listened and watched to our last episode, we had a mistake. We fess up to that. For some reason, I thought that the 30-day reprieve ended last month and June 9th instead of July 9th. And we had a panic moment after recording the podcast, and we had our wonderful marketing team come in and put an edit over there to correct us. And again, that's why they call us borderline geniuses. Definitely not geniuses. And we look forward to getting things right in this, our Kenton, our eighth podcast.
Eighth podcast, yep.
So next is 10, then it's 12, a dozen, then we get a baker's dozen, and then we roll on forever, right? There's momentum.
There's momentum. Keep subscribing, keep liking us, 5-star ratings. Let's go.
I know. Keep us on the air. We belong on the air. We should be syndicated. We should be on the radio waves around the world. And it's only with your support that we could ever get there. But again, thanks for listening to our episode 8. Today we're going to talk about reciprocal tariffs. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And what to expect so far on July 9th. We've got a little interesting commentary on the Court of International Trade and the liquidation of anti-dumping duties, which we'll share with you guys. We've got a pretty cool little conversation about bicycle assembly in the United States that begs a little interpretation of how things all fit together in the United States. But first, Kenton, you want to start with a little bit of an ocean market update?
Well, the ocean market is more like a marshmallow. It's getting soft. I'm thinking about the 4th of July, roasting a marshmallow, and that's what I'm thinking about when I think the ocean market.
It's gonna be burning soon, like the marshmallows that my kids roast. It might be a fire soon.
Well, I don't know about that, but right now it seems to be a little bit of a soft market. We're seeing rates, falling. We're seeing peak seasons that were assessed and assigned not too long ago slipping away. So I think it's a good opportunity or a good market for people to take advantage of the remaining stay on the reciprocal tariffs and bring some of that inventory in ahead of time before we see the shakeup, before things start unraveling and the terrifying experience comes back.
And I appreciate you drawing attention to that. It is a good time to ship. I think this does speak, again, we've talked about this before, to the broader concern with the U.S. economy, the health of the U.S. economy, U.S. consumer spending power, housing starts, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be curious to watch through the summer how those things shake up, and if there's enough purchasing power in the U.S. to drive the normal level of global trade that we've seen in the past. So in addition to any tariff impact, I think there certainly has been a greater uh, a greater impact of the overall health of the economy, U.S. economy, and the global economy as a whole. So
I
that
think
being said,
there was a report by the Congressional Budget Office saying that the tariffs are likely to lower income and GDP, but improve the budget deficit. So I mean, that's, should the budget's going to get better because we're bringing in more tariffs, but you and I are paying for it down the line, and that's going to impact our ability to purchase. So I think the Congressional Budget Office sees the writing on the wall, and it's pretty plain about it.
yeah, it feels like the beginning of a spiral. And I won't say what direction that spiral may go in. I hesitate to comment,
Mhm.
but let's keep our fingers crossed and hope we can move forward on that. Speaking of ocean freight, we had some interesting activity. Again, remember we're recording June 26, 2025, and we're just coming off of a weekend where there were major tensions between Israel, Iran, and the U.S., and a potential oil embargo by Iran. And we are fortunate, it appears, that things have cooled off,
Mhm.
and that there's not a significant impact on shipping. I don't think there would be a large impact on our typical audience. Bulk crude oil tankers, of course, would be a problem. Um,
Mhm.
the impact that we could potentially see from Iran shutting down the Straits of Hormuz would be in rising fuel costs, right, which get passed along as bunker surcharges and such. Any thought there, Kenton? Any commentary?
No, I mean, we know the Strait of Hormuz is, it's a significant waterway to the Persian Gulf. Seems funny to say Persian Gulf. I remember in eighth grade with you know, the what was it called? Desert Shield or Desert Storm, and that
Stormin'
was
Norman Schwarzkopf, baby.
I still had the Topps baseball cards they made of those. I loved those. Those were amazing. So it's funny to bring that back up. It was circa 1990, 1992, and while it's an important waterway. I don't want to mitigate that, but for most of us and most of the customers in the freight forwarding world, that they're not going to see that impact directly. It's not like the Panama Canal or a throughway where we're going to see container freight be impacted. So I think a sliver of good news that some geopolitical military action isn't going to create a black swan event for the shipping industry, or apparently isn't.
Knock on wood immediately, please. And yeah, so looks like we've dodged that. And the Federal Maritime Commission has lost Chairman Sola, and apparently moving on to bigger and better things in his political career, and that leaves quite a few vacancies on the Federal Maritime Commission. I think we're up to two open spots, and they should be filled by President Trump here, which will be interesting. I was originally under the Trump administration, uh,
You were
back
fantastic.
with the Doge administration and the Elon Musk situation. A lot of situations. Curious what might happen to the Federal Maritime Commission as an agency, and it appears that maritime policy is high on the administration's list of priorities, and be curious to see if we end up with an FMC with several new appointees, and a commission that has more teeth in it than before, right? As they sink into different investigations. I know that there's been an investigation about unfair embargo by Spain on U.S. ships that were carrying Israeli cargo, right?
Interesting.
They're also looking at maritime choke points and obviously the shipbuilding issues that we've talked about in the past. So, interestingly enough, with all this going on, this once little, agency may get a position in the limelight soon. And but for now, we have no clear leader at this moment. But again, the
Mhm.
president with the opportunity to appoint two new commissioners to the FMC. Interesting times. So,
Well, it's not a
but it,
Supreme Court judge appointee, but it's the next best thing.
everything matters, right? To somebody. Everything has consequences to somebody. To tell my kids that a lot. So, ocean market softening like a marshmallow, hopefully not bursting into flames as we discussed. Overall, U.S. economic spending seems to be down, and overall demand for containerized goods down. Let's talk a little bit about the topic that we haven't been able to get away from. And I will tell you guys, I used to not be able to spell reciprocal for some reason. It was one of those mental blocks. But I've got it down now, man. I must type the word reciprocal 75 times a day. So that's a sign of the times that we're in. And so, Kenton,
Mhm.
July 9th is the end of the 90-day pause on the initial Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs that were
Mhm.
announced. Uh, what are you
Yeah.
hearing, bud?
So that deadline seems to be getting soft like a marshmallow as well. So we've there are some publications, Bloomberg, Politico, and others that have noted Treasury Secretary Bessent indicating that the administration might consider pushing back the deadline, or I think the terms used, moving down the deadline. So we know July 9th is currently where we're setting, but it's likely that this gets pushed back a little bit and that we see um, I think we're going to see a specifically crafted message from the administration highlighting the countries that have been in some serious negotiations. Countries like Vietnam and Thailand, we have reports on Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore. There's some, and then there's others like Cambodia and Myanmar, not a high priority. But I believe that those who have been part of negotiations will receive the benefit of the deadline being extended. Those who are either low priority or have not themselves prioritized a introduction to these discussions, I would not be surprised to see them implement the reciprocal tariffs on those countries. Again, is it going to likely be staggering to the import community? Probably not. We're talking about countries that the administration themselves did not consider a high priority. So it's unlikely that we're talking a lot of impact to the vast majority of the marketplace. But countries that had a major role, India, Indonesia, Vietnam obviously is a massive one right now. there are these are countries that have received the benefit of the divesting out of China. And as such, it was important for those countries to get in front of these tariffs as much as they could to maintain some competitiveness.
And again, I'm rounding off here, but the anticipated tariff, as announced on Liberation Day, was 45% on Vietnam. And
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, saying that
47.
they had about a 95%, trade barrier against the United
Mhm.
States. And I saw in some reading, and I will not cite my sources because I don't have them in front of me, but I saw that Vietnam was hoping to settle around 20%, maybe 25. I don't think that there's any reason to suspect that anybody's walking away untariffed. Do you see that happening?
No, I mean we saw the UK remain at 10%, and they are the ones that have we have a trade surplus with them. So it's unlikely that countries that there is a trade deficit will get away with anything better than 10%.
Agreed. So
Now,
the
China
deficit.
has a huge deficit. We have a huge deficit with China, and the announced deal was 55%. So I think, you're looking, if you're a surplus, you get 10. If you're the biggest deficit we have, you're at 55. So everybody else is going to be somewhere in between there. And I think Vietnam, it's reasonable to expect somewhere in the 20s, mid 20s.
Reasonable, but is it healthy? We will find out. At least we're paying down that deficit. Glad they're taking my money to pay down that deficit. You know, uh, so let's move a little bit away from reciprocal.
Mhm.
We're so again to kind of sum up, we certainly see the 90-day pause getting extended for most of the significant trading partners with the U.S. There's a lot of active negotiation going on with every country right now, or at least the significant ones for U.S. trade.
Mhm.
And we expect them all to fall somewhere between 10% and 55% at the end of the day. So
I think it's a fair assessment. Now, again, how long these tariffs hang on, that's to be determined.
who knows?
We mentioned last time the CIT did rule that the administration overstepped the authority of IEPA. IEPA, according to the CIT, the Court of International Trade, the IEPA Act did not grant the executive branch the authority to unilaterally issue tariffs.
Sure.
So that, the administration has appealed it, and there's currently a stay. And we were informed, I think, between now and our previous recording, that the appeals court will hear the oral arguments beginning on July 30th. So 30th or 31st. I don't want to have another producer moment where they have to correct us.
Sometime in the future, the oral arguments will take place.
So at that time, the oral arguments will take place. And I did notice that in the federal appeals court, it is not going to be simply a panel of 3 judges. It is the entire judge. It is every judge on the appeals court. So I think that's a big ask, and again, I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV, but if the entire appeals court rules in agreement with CIT, I wonder if the appeal will ever be heard by the Supreme Court. Because it's not like you're overturning 3 judges.
I bet you $1,000. This is going up. It feels like too important of an issue for the United States for the Supreme Court not to weigh in. And I doubt you'll get a unanimous decision on the en banc court, appeals court. So we will see, but it's certainly worth paying attention to, and it'll be exciting to see. Exciting is the wrong word there, isn't it? It'll be interesting to see.
It's exciting, right? There's drama to it.
It's
I mean, LA Law was a TV show forever. People love court drama.
Yes, they do. Unfortunately, this may not be the kind that they like.
Are we allowed to go on the road and get our press credentials and go to the court hearing? That would be fun.
I am quite confident you would be thrown out immediately.
No, I mean, probably, but it would still be fun.
We need borderline genius hats, and if there's anyone out there that gets this far on the podcast and types borderline genius hat in a comment on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts, we will send you a Borderline Genius hat.
Ooh, the
So,
gauntlet is thrown down.
yes. So let's see. First one to do it gets a brand new, beautiful, some would call it the most beautiful, some would call it the most amazing Borderline Genius hat for you to wear. Make Borderline Genius acceptable again, and have you wear that.
You
So
see
moving
that,
on
Danielle?
from
You've got to
the
get on that.
yeah, moving on from the Court of International Trade. Our good buddies and lots of exciting things going on there. Again, that word exciting. I don't know where that's coming from. Slow day. Anti-dumping. We didn't move away. I apologize. Moving back. Moving in a quick zigzag, a pivot, and a twist, and turning back to the Court of International Trade.
There was an interesting case. A major retailer had a case on, I think it was around 224 entries, where customs liquidated the anti-dumping entries at a lower rate than was specified by the Department of Commerce. However, they did not recognize that their error until after the 90-day window to make that correction for voluntary liquidation expired. So customs, not following their rules, reliquidated the entries at the higher rate. The retailer filed the court case, and the attorney who was hired by them was successful in appealing the CIT's decision. The CIT allowed customs to correct the liquidation errors after the expired time limit. And however, the Court of Appeals, the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, the same people we were talking about, they denied the motion to stay, and then determined that the CIT does not have the authority to finalize liquidation. That in, I think it's the 19 USC 1514, there is a, what was the statutory scheme, I think is the term that I saw published, that articulates the grounds for the finality of liquidations, and that there are certain exceptions, but in this particular case, the exceptions did not apply. So even though it was erroneously liquidated at a lower rate, that was the final liquidation. And because customs failed to recognize their error and correct it within the window that they could, that the importer benefited by paying the lower anti-dumping rate. And I think this is an interesting situation because my bias is fully on display. I believe it's a slam dunk win to eliminate the IEEPA reciprocal tariffs. Everything I've researched just tells me this: the IEEPA was that the CIT is correct, and that it was not within the administration's ability to initiate tariffs with the powers of IEEPA. And so I've gone into this whole thing going, it's going to be a slam dunk win. The Court of Appeals are going to find in favor of the CIT. And then I find this little nugget, and I go, oh, maybe the Court of Appeals is not prone to rubber stamp CIT decisions. So that's the only reason I bring this up is the proverbial fly in the ointment. We may not be as safe as I initially thought we were.
Well, Kenton, you can be right and powerless and right and powerful. And the powers that be currently with the Supreme Court's makeup, again, tell me that IEEPA is going to be just fine. If I am IEEPA, I'm sleeping fine at night. So
I think IEEPA, the act, will stay fine. I just don't know that they will agree that. I don't know. I mean,
if I'm IEEPA as applied to these tariffs, I sleep fine at night, given our current court administrative makeup and the power that they wield currently. So it'll be interesting to see. You want to talk bicycles?
Bicycles. Oh yeah. So we got some. I have mentioned in the past how disappointed I've been in the current legislative group we have in Congress. However, there's a little note of something interesting going on there. They've actually introduced a bill called the U.S. Bicycle Production and Assembly Act. I normally
Representative
wouldn't want to talk.
Buchanan.
I'm sorry,
Representative Buchanan out of Florida.
out of Florida. Yes,
Yeah,
and
Republican legislator.
Republican.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's got to be a Reagan era Republican because this act would temporarily suspend tariffs on all imported bicycle components and tools that are used to assemble bicycles in the US. So I think it's interesting because most manufacturers that I talk to say, hey, we'd like to get our tooling back from China or wherever, but it's too burdensome to pay the tariffs on this and then try to incorporate that into our production cycle without punitively impacting the cost of our product. So this is a piece of perhaps common sense legislation that says, hey, if you want it built here, let's at least give some preferential treatment to the components so that it will be made here versus made in Taiwan, made in China, made in India, or wherever.
What's a bicycle component?
Chains, sprockets, frames.
So, I mean, now isn't the next step for the chain manufacturers to say, well, we would make it here, but now you got to let our components come in. Like, I struggle with this, and I think it's a great proposal. I don't understand how it works. Probably because it is so common sense. I don't understand how it works in the grand scheme of things, right? And I'll let you talk about kind of the contradictory nature of this. But you obviously have one of the criticisms of tariffs in general is that they're going to hurt U.S. manufacturing because we have to import no matter what we make, right? The idea is we have to import an enormous number of components or raw materials. I think there's a big conversation on what's going to happen to actual existing U.S. manufacturers who use steel or aluminum, right? The price of those goods have gone up, which will now make their finished goods less competitive on the global market. And so the whole debate has been, is there a better way to influence and build back manufacturing? If that's your goal, to bring manufacturing back to the United States, goal or not, I have no opinion on that. I don't have the knowledge base to tell you anything but a gut opinion on that. But there's considerable concern that the tariffs, as implemented, are going to drive up the cost. They clearly have in this Representative Buchanan's mind, right? For whatever bicycle assembly company happens to be located in his district, right? And so he's clearly rising to the occasion and putting forth what appears to be a piece of common sense legislation that is kind of like this is the problem for everybody, right? So now we have special interests creeping in, these super powerful bicycle lobby, creeping in, and we see this, and I think there's not an industry in the U.S. that couldn't make an argument for this.
True, but I mean, the bill does say temporarily suspend tariffs, so I wonder if this is in an effort to initiate the manufacturing of bicycles in the U.S. I don't really know. It does say that there's a requirement that the International Trade Commission will develop a report within 5 years on the progress toward the goal of assembling 2 million bicycles annually in the U.S. And then within 10 years, I think it's 5 million bicycles. So it sounds like a bill to stimulate that market more than to take an existing market and better it. So I don't know. Like you said, I don't have the narrative behind the bill as to what was the genesis or anything along those lines.
You know, it was Big 10 speed, dude. Big 10 speed and their money.
Lance Armstrong comes knocking on the door.
Yeah, getting together with big mountain bike, and you know, and they have a rational argument, right? It is the most rational argument, and again, I would argue, you know, this is something that as a country we could have been working on for many years. It doesn't answer in my mind a couple of the questions. I think with manufacturing in general, right? Even if we're able to get the components in here, does our cost basis for manufacturing make us competitive, right? I guess so. If you slap on tariffs on bicycles in general, right, or manufactured or fully assembled bicycles, but there seems to be a way, and I think that that's what's been missing from the 2025 approach to U.S. trade with the globe has been the carrots, right? Lots of sticks, and I think that as a country we certainly would be able to come through and stimulate growth in industries that are important to both the U.S. people and the U.S. overall welfare and safety too. So I think that means there's a 0% chance that Mr. Buchanan's bill is ever even seen. So I wish him the best in that, but it makes way too much sense for the timeline that we're currently in. Yeah,
I can't see this. I don't see this bill seeing the light of day, even for discussion, just because of the tenor of the current environment. Now, like you said, if I'm in automotive, if I'm in any other manufacturing world, I want to know why should bicycles get this benefit and my heaters don't, or my air compressors don't, or whatever industry you're in. Because, something like this is really hearkening back to the pre-Trump first term where the U.S. had an average tariff rate of 3%. That's effectively duty free. I mean, what's 3%? We're not talking a lot, especially when you start looking at today's numbers of 55, and China was at 125 for a period of time. So 3% is basically free.
So you pose a great question, and I think I'm going to give you the answer to wrap this podcast up, if you're okay with that.
Let's wrap.
I've enjoyed the conversation today. I've enjoyed filming with you as always, and I think I will leave you with this nugget. It makes a lot more sense if you just don't think about it. So turn on the blinders, go have fun with the kiddos, play some softball, play some Spider-Man, get your chores done at home. Your wife tells me you've been slacking completely.
That's true.
So, and try to enjoy some of this summer. But thanks for having the conversation with me, and thanks for our listeners. And I wonder if anybody's going to get a hat. How cool would that be?
That would be cool.
That'd be really
I'll wear the hat.
You can't have the hat.
I can go on YouTube and comment. Just watch me.
You are exempted.
Oh.
You are exempted.
Danielle, make sure I get a hat. Awesome.
Where are you, Danielle? You talking to her over there? She's not Robin. This isn't Howard Stern. She's not in the booth with you. All right, bud. Thank you so much. Signing off. Anthony Pagnato, Kenton Grimes, Borderline Genius, Mohawk Global. We're excited and proud to talk to you. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.